priest and the minister and the rabbi were living in the same town. And they got together for coffee and they were talking about, they all performed many funerals. So they were talking about the eulogies of the funeral. So each one was saying what they would want at their eulogy. What they want the people to say when they're in the box, And so the priest says, "Oh, I love people to say that I was a person of kindness. I helped out my parishioners. I was a man of goodness and helping." And so that's very fine, very fine. And then the minister says, "I hope that by my funeral, whoever gets up is going to eulogize me as a man of faith, great faith, that I shared my faith with my parishioners." And then the rabbi got up and says, by my funeral, he says, I hope that whoever gets up gives a look at the box and says, "Look, he's still moving. He's still moving." So that they would see that he's still alive. So this is always the Jewish way, that we never give in to death, and we always want that there should be a what you call a living legacy. So one of the things that we all know that we all have, and after 120 we set up a monument at the cemetery. And again, along the same lines, we know that a cemetery in English there's one word for a cemetery, but in Hebrew there are three distinct names that are given to a cemetery. One in Hebrew it's called the Beit HaKfarot, the house of the graves. That's the simple translation in Hebrew. Cemetery is called Beit HaKfarot. Kfarot is the burial place, the graves. So it's the house of the graves. That's one word in Hebrew. Another expression in Hebrew that's used for a cemetery is Beit Almin. Beit Almin means the house of the worlds, which alludes to the world, the life after, the hereafter. Beit Almin. We go to the Beit Olam. Beit. It's the eternal home, and that's the second name is the Beit Olam, and the third name that we give to the cemetery is, as we said in Hebrews, three names, is Beit HaChayim, the house of the living. So the first two names we sort of can understand, the name of the house of the burial, or the house of the eternal home, alluding to the hereafter. But what's this house of the living? It's almost like the guy says, look, he's living. Why would we call it? It's almost like a joke. You call it, what's the house of the living? It's the house of the dead, the house of the cemetery. It's not the house of the living. So they explain that the way you live is the way you die. The place of your burial, the place of where you're buried is how you live. And the legacy that you leave over. Some people, they live a physical life, a life of the material. They're only interested in physical pleasures. They don't spend any of the time in life. They don't spend any time dealing with spiritual things. All it is physical pursuits, a house, a car, taking care of their body, taking care of their food, very important. Some people, that's the way they live, the cheesecake. They live the life. Every day they wake up, what do they think of the first thing? What's for breakfast? And then what's for lunch? And what's for supper? Nothing spiritual, nothing higher in their life. Then you have other people that live a spiritual life. They shun the physical. That's not important to them. They run into They go to shul, they go to synagogue, they read Tehillim a whole day, they read the holy stuff, and they live a spiritual life, almost one can call an ascetic life. They just serve the soul and not the body. They run away from physical. They hate physical things. Who needs physical things? It's physical things is very transient. They invest in the spiritual. So they sit, they study Torah, they go to shiurim. They're always busy with higher. Oh. So that's the second kind of a person. So for the first person that's always involved in the physical, all they think about is the physical of the life. So the place where they're buried is their grave. That's the end, right? So is your legacy at the end. What did you live your whole life? You lived your whole life, a physical life. So this is the final stop over here at the cemetery at the end, because all that you invested in was the body. So the body is buried. So that's why it's called in Hebrew. That's one name, the house of the grave. That's it. This is the end. That's what it is. And you have another person who lives a spiritual life, and every morning they wake up, they think about another shiur and how they can study Torah and how they can be more spiritual, and they think about all day about higher things. So what's the legacy of that person? Beit Olam, the eternal home, right? So when they die, they invested all their life in their soul. So the soul continues, obviously, in the world to come. And their whole life, the way they live their life, that continues. They lived a spiritual life, and now they continue in the spiritual world. That's the second way. But what's the third? The third explanation, the third name for the cemetery was what? Anybody remember? You can't tell it to me now, but it's Beit HaChayim, the house of the living. We said that's a funny name to have, the house of the living, when you're dead. But this is the third kind of a person. And for them, that's the name. Beit HaChayim means someone who their whole life they lived a life, the transformational life. They didn't live a physical life, for sure not. They didn't even lead a spiritual life, because a spiritual life really is living in another world. What did they do in their life? This third group category of people, they worked on tikkun olam. They worked on changing the world to make it a better place. In the 70, 80 years that they lived their life, they were constantly helping other people, fixing the world, making the world a better place, influencing the world in a positive way through the study of Torah and the observance of mitzvahs. But the emphasis was not just the physical, for sure not the physical, not even the spiritual, but it was about bringing the spiritual down to the physical world. They transformed the world with their spirituality and made the world a better place. What's Chassidus called Adira B'Tachtainim. They made a dwelling place for God in the physical world. So they made a living legacy. They built schools, they built shuls, they built things in this world. They're going to change the world. So when they go away, these people, they never really go away. They're Beit HaChayim. The cemetery then is called the house of the living legacy. Living legacy is like I said, first person, the house of the graves. That's the person that lived the physical life. The second name, the house of the eternal home. That's the person that lived a spiritual life. But then you have the third group. This is the coveted group, the group that we strive for. The one that was able to connect the physical and the spiritual together and make a living legacy in this world, to create tikkun olam, to fix the world for the better. So this is the third name for the sagas I gave you. Now you know the three Jewish names for the cemetery: the house of the graves, the house of the eternal home, and the house of the living. So a person is buried in the cemetery, as we spoke. And hopefully they're moving a little bit. They're alive. They've impacted the world. So what do we do to remember the person that's there? We put up something known as a matzeva. a stone, right? It's not to get stoned, but you put up a stone to remember somebody, a loved one. We put it up there, and which is very, very important that we put up a beautiful stone, a tribute to the person that we love. And what the Jews put up, we put up like a big monument that's placed on the place of the burial. Where does that come from? How did that become a Jewish custom, a Jewish tradition? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the background, the history first of the Matzeva, and then we'll tell you what the spiritual side of that is all about. So what is the history of placing a stone? First one in the Torah that we know that they placed a stone or stones at the burial place was the patriarch Jacob. We all know there was Abraham, there was Isaac, and Jacob. They were the three patriarchs. And the third of the patriarchs, he had a few wives, but his beloved wife, she was Rachel. Rachel was the love of his youth, and he wanted to marry her, and did marry her. After he also married Leah, and he had actually 4 wives, Jacob. But his wife, Rachel, we all know that she died on the roadside. She passed away on the roadside while giving birth to their final child, Benjamin. And so she says that she was having a hard time giving birth, and she passed away while giving birth to Benjamin. And she called him Ben Oni, the son of my sorrow, because she was going through this very, very hard, tragic childbirth. But it says that their husband Jacob heard what she said, and he named the son Benjamin, son of my right hand. He made a positive. He didn't want the kid to grow up the name of the son of my sorrow, whole life to have the names. He made it something similar. He's saying changed the Benoni to Benjamin, right? Which is a similar name, but it's more positive. The son of my right hand. So what she made was more a tragic thing. He turned it around. But that's for another time. Where the origins of the name Benjamin. But Benjamin was one of the very important tribes of Israel. And when he was born, that was the end of the 12 tribes. He was the last of the 12 tribes to be born. And Rachel died in childbirth. So it must have been very, very tragic. It was on the roadside. It's a terrible thing to bury someone on the roadside, It's not a respectable cemetery. All the patriarchs and matriarchs are buried in Hebron, in a nice cemetery that was there, that Abraham, we know, bought that cemetery from Ephron, the Hittite, and he created this beautiful cemetery, which today you can go there to Hebron, and you can see all the patriarchs and matriarchs buried there. Everyone besides for Rachel. She was buried on the roadside. So it says that Jacob wanted to make sure, especially, that people should show respect. During the war, there were a lot of people that died like that and buried on the roadside. It was very, very tragic, when that happens. What's going on, let's say now in Ukraine. People dying and being buried all over the place, unfortunately. Very, very tragic thing. When I for many years, I used to go visit Ukraine because my father was there. And we also had the Goldie's sister and brother-in-law were in the Ukraine. So many summers I used to go to visit Ukraine. So I've traveled a lot around Ukraine over the years. I always used to land in Kiev in the Borispol airport. That's where I landed always, in Kiev. When you see this now, I was very familiar with that airport. I davened in that airport many times because I was running to catch a flight or a plane or whatever. So I was there in the Borispol airport in Kiev. I'm not sure. I think I just heard that they bombed that too. So it's quite a tragic thing. But something I noticed specifically around Ukraine, because when the Nazis, when they came into the Ukraine in the early 40s, so the Polish Jews, they sent off to the concentration camps, most of them. But in Ukraine and White Russia and all those places, in Lithuania, Latvia as well, they didn't send the Jews to the concentration camps. They murdered them on the spot. That's the way they killed people, right? They would come to all the little Jewish shtetl, and they would bring them out to the forest, and they would just one bullet at a time, kind of. They would shoot them, and we all know about the famous monument, burial place in Kiev, which is known as the Babi Yar. Babi Yar is today, it's a park, middle of Kiev, but in the olden days there was a big trench there that was in that place called Babi Yar, or the Russians call it Babin Yar. And they had a big trench there. It's like a valley almost in the earth, right? And they gathered all the Jews of Kiev there, and they shot them to death, and they fell into this trench, and then they covered it with earth. So I think there was maybe 50 or 60,000 Jews that were killed in that one place in Babi Yar, maybe more, maybe 70 or 80. I don't remember the numbers exactly. Well, the reason why I mention this, because whenever I would travel around the countryside of Ukraine, I used to go visiting a lot of times the family there, and also I would go to visit all the different burial places of some of the greatest tzaddikim are buried in the Ukraine. The Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid Mezrich, of Levi Yitzchak Badichev, the Chabad Rebbes, you have the Alter Rebbe is buried in Kaddish. And so I went to visit while I was there. I spent some time there in the summers. So I used to go visit. But on the way, you'd be going down a countryside, and you see a menorah or a Magen David on a roadside, in the middle of nowhere, right? So you see it. You say, driver, pull over. I want to see what it is. You give a look. You see a Star of David, and there's a little monument there. A little monument. It says, over here, 15,000 Jews were killed and buried. It's this spot right here, middle of a forest somewhere, nowhere land, right? And I saw this many times between cities, many times I saw this kind of thing. 5,000 Jews are buried here, 10,000 Jews are buried here. They made the Ukrainian government, I guess they paid to make a little sign, a monument, whatever, but you don't really see anything. It's just an open field that's covered up. And you know that in that place, 10,000, 15,000 Jews were buried. So I'm just saying that the concept of a monument is very significant, especially when it's on the roadside, like by Jacob, when he buried his dear wife, Rachel, whom she passed away on the roadside as they were traveling in a place called Bethlehem. Don't know if you know where Bethlehem is in Israel. It's not far. It's on the way actually to Hebron, where he lived, right? So Bethlehem is quite a famous non-Jewish site, also because of different things that happened there in the history of other religions. So, but that's where Kever Rachel is, as the Torah says, that's Kever Rachel ad hayom hazeh, till this day. I guess that's the time of Moses. So they refer to Kever Rachel. But it says over there, when it tells you about how Jacob buried his wife on the roadside, it says that he placed a mound of stones over her burial place. Hence the first source of a monument of sorts. So we're not talking over there about a single monument, but the first time that it appears in the Torah is a heap of stones. He placed a heap of stones upon her burial place, and the simple reason for it was that it should be demarcated. It should be, the place should be respected by other people, that they should note that this is a place where someone is buried. And hence we always place some marker on the place, but it seems like in the olden days they placed like a heap of stones over that spot. Many of the old cemeteries actually, they not only place a stone by the headstone, but they also place a heap of stones like Jacob did over the entire space of the burial place. Many cemeteries and many funeral homes, many places around the world have seen that, where they place a heap of stones around the whole place, so the entire place is demarcated. In some of the cemeteries, unfortunately, people, they step on the place of the burial place, and they don't realize there's grass there, so you don't know it's different. So when you have a heap of stones, you know that that's different. So it was to protect the burial place from people. The people should know that this is a significant place, and also when you have the stones on top, the animals can't get to the carcass or whatever, things like that. So the stones also protect the top of the ground, so that so it's a little bit more secure than that even if it didn't bury so deep, the animals won't get to it. So that's, I guess, especially if it's on the roadside, they would place all these stones on top. But that has become a time-honored tradition by the Jewish people to place some stones, to place something to demarcate the place. In fact, in Hebrew, the burial place is known as Zion. You call it a Zion. Zion is a marker, a marked off place. Many people wonder where the name Zion comes from, the Zionism, right? We call Jerusalem Zion, right? In many places in the Torah, we yearn to go back to Zion. What is Zion? Where is that name? Why is that the name of Israel, or the name of Jerusalem? It's called Zion. And in the Middle Ages, especially, that word is used in all the liturgy and everything, the word Zion, Zion, Zion. And eventually, when the Zionist movement started, they adopted that name that was used for Israel and Jerusalem, called Zion. It's strange, because the word Zion, Zion, is the place we use for a grave, for a cemetery. Why is Israel called Zion? And the answer is that the word Zion means a marked off place. And that's what a grave always was. It was a marked off place, a place which was respected and honored, and it was marked off with a heap of stones or a headstone. Whatever it is, it always was a place that we demarcated that place as consecrated ground. Almost like we as Jews, when we were exiled from Israel, we always looked forward to come back to the consecrated place of Israel and Jerusalem. Can you still hear me? Am I breaking up? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Because it says, I just got a sign over here. It says, you are unstable. So I'm getting worried a little bit if I'm unstable. It says my connection is unstable. So you know what I mean? When you hear that these days, that means it's time for me to go to a shrink if my connection is unstable. But Israel is called Zion. Why is it called Zion? Because the word Zion, like a cemetery, is called the Zion. Many times they used to speak about going to the grave of a tzaddik. They call it the Zion of a tzaddik. The Rebbe, many times when he used to go to the Frierdiker Rebbe's burial place to pray, and he would tell three people, I'm going to pray. You see, the bracha he would give when someone would write into him, he would say, Askir al HaTzion. I will mention it on the Zion. Zion is the place where the person is buried. That's like a consecrated place. And you remember we spoke about in some of our Kabbalah classes about how in Judaism, it's not just a place, it's a consecrated space. And we believe that that space, the cemetery, is a channel to the deceased. That's why it's important to go visit that place, because like Zion, like Jerusalem, just like Jerusalem and the Western Wall is Zion, it is a marked place. Why is it marked? It's marked because that is a place that's closer to God. It's a channel to God. Almost in the same place, the cemetery is also a channel to the deceased. So if you want to have some meaningful prayer to the deceased, so the deceased will be a good advocate on our behalf to God, and they should become our channel to God, that's the burial place. And so Jews, for thousands of years, we honor the place of the burial, especially a tzaddik, a righteous person. People used to go visit there, and they would call it Zion, the same name that we give to Jerusalem and Israel. Why the same name? One reason is because it means demarcated, but more than that. As we explained now, it means a place that is a channel, that is a portal to the higher worlds, which is important. That's why it's called the same name as Israel, Jerusalem. Zionism is the paying attention to that place that is the holy place of the Jewish people in the world. So that's the story with the Matzeva. So the first Matzeva that we have was with Jacob, but over the years, throughout the generations, we find that Jews have always placed stones or a headstone at the today the most prevalent custom is to place at the headstone, to place a stone, usually a vertical stone. Some people, they place it just a little bit on the bottom, like just horizontal. But most cemeteries today, Jewish cemeteries, you place a stone, and usually we consecrate it within the year. It's customary. People want to know when is the Jewish custom to place the stone. There are many different customs. The Shulchan Code of Jewish law, it says that you should place it before the year, because it says that until a year you don't forget the person, but by the time the year comes, you need a little reminder to remember the person. So that's why it says before a year you should make sure to place the stone. Many people have that challenge for me for COVID, because they can't go to the cemetery, and they can't have, they couldn't have the unveilings and things like that in COVID, so they were very, very worried or concerned. I would tell them the main thing is to place the stone there. Let the people place the stone, and a consecration you can make later on, a ceremony you can make later on, but as long as you made sure during the COVID that you had the stone up at least before the end of the year. The Kabbalah people are more Kabbalistically inclined. They place the stone earlier than the year. Many place it before the high holidays. Others place it at the end of the Shloshim. In Chabad and many other very, very Kabbalistic circles, they place it even at the end of the Shiva. The stone they place at the end of the Shiva right away. So it doesn't mean they have the ceremony right away, but they place already a stone immediately. A lot of countries where the family have to travel from far, and they come for the cemetery, for the funeral, they allow them, even though their custom might have been to do it by the year, but many places they allow it, so the family shouldn't have to pay out thousands and thousands of dollars to come another time during that year. So many places that they'll do the Shiva in that city, and then to accommodate the people who will come from far, they'll do the unveiling ceremony, what you call the consecration of the stone. They'll do it right away. It's called the unveiling, by the way. P.S. Unveiling is not so much of a Jewish custom. The placing of the shmata, you place something over it, you unveil there's nothing wrong with that concept. We do it, but the Jewish custom always was mostly consecrating the stone, to go there to the cemetery, to recognize the stone, to read the inscription, and to say some prayers and say Kaddish at so that's the unveiling ceremony. But the unveiling is like, it's like a ribbon cutting kind of thing that's become a prevalent custom. It's not that it's wrong. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not necessarily a Jewish custom as such. We do it at all the unveiling. We call it unveiling even, right? But it's to reveal the stone, but the main custom is to go to be the present with the stone there and to consecrate it, to dedicate it to the deceased, and to say some prayers and to say a Kaddish and a Kel Mole. That's what we call the unveiling ceremony. On the stone, on every stone, usually you have the name, the Hebrew name, and you have the Hebrew, the date of passing usually on the stone, and then in the Hebrew you have a few interesting letters that you'll see on the stone, in addition to the name, usually the name and the father's name. Somebody Ben or Bat, the father's name, and sometimes they'll mention also the mother's name in Hebrew. But there always is the Hebrew date of passing. And what usually they have on top of the matzeva is two Hebrew letters, Pei Nun. Always there on top of every matzeva, you'll see it, the Pei Nun. Pei Nun stands for Po Nigbar or Po Nitman. Here lies, or here is intoned. That's Pei Nun. That's what it means. Here lies, right? And then you have in the Hebrew, you have an equivalent to may he rest in peace, or whatever, some people place in the English, they place whatever, may his soul rest in peace, MHIS, or IP, whatever, may his soul rest in peace. So you have that in the English, but in the Hebrew, you also have a series of letters that are on every matzeva, and every stone, wherever you'll go, you'll see the same 5 Hebrew letters. In addition to the Pei Nun, you have on the bottom of the inscription in Hebrew, you'll have 5 letters, which is Taf Nun Tzadik Bet Hey. And where does that come from? It's a biblical verse that says, it says, I think by Yoav ben Tzruya, or by the general of King David, somewhere over there, by when he passed away, it says, and his soul was bond in the bond of eternal life. So the Hebrew 5 Hebrew letters is Tahei, Nafsho, Tzror, Tzror HaChayim. Taf Nun Tzadik Bet Hey. May his soul be bond in the bond of eternal life. And that is affirming our belief that there is life after death, and we make a prayer that the soul of the deceased may their soul continue to live on and be tied in the bond of life. So that's the blessing. It's equivalent to may he rest in peace. But if more rest in peace, it's may he be connected to the eternal life. And that is the 5 Hebrew letters. You'll see that on every single stone wherever you may go in Hebrew. Many times at the cemetery, just give me a second here. Yes.
Rabbi, how are you?
I'm on the class right now.
Are you still on the class? Okay, I'll call you back later.
Okay, thanks. So we say Tahei Nafshot Tzror B'Tzrachayim Yasol. But so many times at the unveilings, I explain why is it called the bond of life. It should be called the afterlife. Why do we call it the bond of life? May his soul be tied in the bond of life. It should say in the afterlife, in the world to come, Olam Haba. I explained to the family that there's a concept of the bond of life, in that every person that passes away, they want to continue in this world to some degree. But one of the strongest ways that a person can continue is through progeny, through children, or students, or proteges, or people that you've impacted in your life. But the people that you've influenced, the children, let's say, that you have, the person that dies is irreplaceable. There's no two people that are totally alike. But you continue through your children. Every child that you have has a little other genetic part of the person. So many times when you have, the children standing by the funeral together, so it's there. When all of the Untitled family, when the family stays together, family that prays together, stays together, family that's close with each other. So then they create the bond of life. What's the bond of life? The bond of the living. So the continuation of a person that deceases, passes on, continues in this world, like we said before. How do they continue? When the children are together and alive. That's called the bond of life. So if the children go in different directions and they don't talk to each other like you have many times, so yes, there is some continuity, but it's a weak continuity. But when the children hold hands and they become the bond of life, means they bond with each other, then the deceased continues to live on, not just in a fragmented way, but in a unified way. And then when you look at all the kids together sitting by the Shabbos table, whatever it is, that's a reflection on the person that's passed away. So that's why I say it's called the bond of life. But we will continue, and more on this next week. So we wish everybody a good Shabbos. Anyone have any questions on anything? Anybody on the stones? Anybody have a question? I see somebody has a question. To unmute yourself, you want to ask?
Rabbi,
Anybody?
I know in South Africa it was a custom always when you visited the monument to take a stone, to place a stone on the monument.
Right. Okay.
Is that a
I'll
universal-
save that one for next week. Okay, because I'm continuing on the subject, so we'll continue that next week
Okay.
on
Thank you,
the stone, getting stoned, many stones, right? Not just one stone. Anybody else?
Thanks, Rabbi Mazel Tov.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you, Rabbi. That was wonderful.
Good Shabbos.
So we'll see you all and have a great Shabbos.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Shabbos.
Bye bye. Shabbos.